lost my screen. Okay, so we are live. Hey, everybody, it's Libby with Fearlessness. What is fearlessness? Well, it's that underlying grit that empowers us entrepreneurs to keep forging ahead. Even when hope seems distant and far away, it's the courage to walk through those fires of hell, knowing that we'll come out stronger and better on the other side. Stay tuned and learn how to get fearlessness. I'm your host, Libby DeLucien, and I have a very special guest. I say that every time, but you are a very special guest, Martha Woodward. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay. Well, my name's Martha Woodward, and I started in healthcare. I worked in healthcare for about 20 years. I got tired of the bureaucracy in healthcare, and I had as a consumer, I had Mary Maids clean my house, and then I moved, and there was nobody but independent. And long story short, got tired of bureaucracy, thought, I'm going to open my own business. And I opened a cleaning business, which I knew zero about cleaning. I just knew that I loved walking into a clean house. So, and I really was impressed with the systems that Mary Maid used. Even as a consumer and not at all thinking about that industry, I did notice the different things that they did. And I know they're kind of, now that I'm in the cleaning industry, I know that is franchises aren't necessarily thought of well, but I had a great experience. And I think it just depends on who's running them. But anyway, so I opened my own cleaning business. I live in a town of 8,000 people. So
Is that
needless
how
to
big
say,
the town was where you started?
yes, we've actually shrunk a little. So it might have been 10,000 back when I started. And all I did, but you know what's crazy is we ran two teams here, two teams of three at the time. And so, yeah, I feel like we kind of capitalized on who was eligible to buy our services. We capitalized on that. But it was kind of a safety net because in a way, I mean, they were my friends. They were people that I'd met through the chamber from my hospital days. And so I cut my teeth on local friends. And I go back and say, I'm so sorry, because at that point in time, I did not know what I was doing in any way as far as leadership. Yeah. So we expanded to a town that was 50 miles away. I eventually shut down, so I didn't have to operate in two states. I shut down the little one and ended up with one branch that was 50 miles away and then another one that was about 100 miles away. And, that's where I grew up. So I was familiar and, yeah. So I had to learn early on how to not be there every minute of the day. But it took a while.
Yeah. And then, so now what do you do?
Yeah. Now I sit at my desk at my high-low table isn't working anymore. I'm so mad my stand-up desk quit. And I do behind the scenes, like working with the quality driven. I own that. And I work with the development team and support and plan events. We were just talking about that and just working on where we're going in the future.
Awesome. So we love QDS, by the way. We are a user. Organize It, my service company, is a user. And it's funny how we always talk about our cleaning company. We forget about, oh yeah, I do this, by the way, too.
Yep.
So I find it, really interesting how, yes, sometimes franchise can be the dirty word within
Mm-hmm.
like owner operator businesses or even, small to medium-sized service-based businesses because we compete against those franchises. But I don't think owning Woot Recruit, we've been doing recruiting for franchises, and you see
Mhm.
some really fair
Right.
ran franchises versus like you see some really not great ones that take advantage of
Mhm.
the franchisees. So I really do think they have evolved, and there's some great franchises out there that people could take advantage of. Um, versus they're all bad. It's not all a dirty word.
Right.
But I want to break into some questions, and I love your story about opening one location in a small town, closing it down, opening one 100 miles away. I'm doing kind of the same thing. I went back to my hometown, and we're opening a
Mhm.
second location in that town because I have that support to try it, as far as people to help me launch it, to do
Right.
interviews, to hire. Um, I would say through that journey, what do you think was your biggest lesson when it comes to even just you said you didn't even have the leadership skills.
Mm.
What is the story that comes to like one of your biggest lessons and having to learn that the hard way?
And it's funny because I thought I did. I was supervising a department that, we had 30 employees. And so I thought I had those skills, and I had a master's in business. So I thought I had those skills. But what I didn't realize and appreciate is that the the people that I was used to leading, and this is not to degrade or diminish the people that we hire in the cleaning business at all, but the people I was hiring, were recruited sometimes from other states, and they came in with a professional degree, meaning that they had really already shown that they were motivated and self-directed and all those things. And so I really I didn't appreciate that enough. So when I opened the cleaning business, I wanted to be a flexible and fair boss, and I did go in the cleaning business thinking I was going to give the employees an awesome opportunity, that I was hoping to be like their best boss they'd ever had. Well, what I did not realize is that you can't come in with very few boundaries and just allow people to make great decisions, because that did not happen. That did not happen. And it really took me, sad to say, it took me about 3 years to figure out that the problem was absolutely me. Um, and I tell the story of, it was the week of Thanksgiving or maybe the week before, but busy, busy time. I had an ill parent. I was out of the office, and I get a phone call from one of my employees, and I still refer to her in this day. She was kind of my bully employee. She was running the show, but I was letting her. And I answered the phone, and she starts telling me when she can and can't work that week of Thanksgiving. Now, we're talking, it's a long time ago, but it was like we're talking just a few days in the future for Thanksgiving week. And I remember my mouth like falling open on the, who the hell is in charge here? And then I had to laugh and think, well, not you, And that, honestly, I can still remember her name. I can remember exactly where it was. And that honestly was the draw the line in the sand. Like, I remember walking into my parents' house, and I was like, you got to get it together. And from that point forward, I really was a changed person. And so I got to thank that girl. And she really, when somebody pushes you far enough, then most of the time there's a point, your breaking point, and then that's when you're not going to take it anymore. And that's what I had to go through. So
It's a great lesson.
yeah, it was a really good lesson.
Um, and I just saw this topic come up literally today in Facebook. Like someone keeps calling out,
Ah,
and what do I do? What do I do?
yeah.
And it's kind of like one of those things where I think you gotta kind of get pushed around a little bit as the business owner.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and then, I answered her on Facebook and I was kind of like, this is not so much a culture thing. I mean, it is, but I'm talking like to talk to yourself through it.
Right.
It's like you have to ask yourself, why am I letting this happen?
Right.
Why am I not doing anything about it?
Yeah.
And who's running the business
Yeah.
currently? Like, just to stand back and ask yourself those things. Those are more of a leadership. Like, why am I letting this happen?
Right. And I've talked to lots of people, and a lot of people have this exact problem. And there's a lot of fear. There's just a ton of fear because as a business owner, you need people to do the numbers. And so there's just so much fear behind letting people go and having that empty slot. And then of course that's where Root Recruit comes in, that you don't get there. But um back when this was happening to me, that wasn't a normal thing to always be filling you
Your
fill your
bench.
empty seat before you
Yeah.
ever have it. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's definitely one of the things I learned from that, is that I was going to have a bench. And I started hiring for a PRN position so that I always had that extra hand. But, you know, also, when you get over the fear of letting somebody go, you just have to have that first one or two sacrificial lambs, because that was the turning point for me, is when, after that aha moment, I revamped my policies and I basically rewrote them to where I kept my best people in mind, and I knew that I got to use these policies. These policies I have to use them. So I spent time behind the scenes rewriting them and making them flexible enough that my best employees could stay employed, and the other ones, well, if
Yep.
you don't, you don't. And and so I always try to tell people it's better if you have lax policies that you actually follow through than to have strict policies that you
You
just,
never
like an
follow.
ostrich, put your head in the sand. And when you're ignoring it, do not begin to think that your other employees are ignoring it. They know you're letting people blow through that.
Well, I think it also, you don't think this as the owner when this happens, but it also shows instability in the company
Hmm.
because people don't know, oh, are they going to enforce this? Are they not? Am I going to get in trouble? Well, she didn't, so I can do it too. And so it shows instability in your company. And like one of the things that employees want the most is that feeling of stability.
Hmm.
And so it shows that
Right.
instability. I also think, as you were talking through that, I'm rereading. I'm not reading, I'm studying the book because I've read it like 4 times now. I'm studying it. So I'm actually like really researching and thinking it through, is the Think and Grow Rich. And in that book, they talk
Hmm.
about how certain things happen to you and they could be irrelevant because you didn't
Yeah.
have the maturity level at the time to
Right.
understand it when it happened. And then it will happen again or again and
Hmm.
again. And then you take it a different way because you've either aged or
Hmm.
you've become more mature. And I think that philosophy there is so true in leadership.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm sure I had a similar situation before that day. It's just that you get chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. And so when that hit, and it could have been that, like I say, I know I had a parent sick, I mean, really sick. And so it could have been that, vulnerability was just raw and it was just the right time and place. And it was, it was like, okay, I've had it. I'm done. But I do think there's just so much fear around letting people
Oh
go
yeah.
and having those open positions. But you, my one thing that I learned is over time you'll have client creep, is what I call it. And when that happened, it forced me to go and say, all right, who do we have as an outlier in our service area? Or maybe we used to serve that area and now we've shrunk it. You start looking at those not as profitable jobs, or maybe, even in my head, like clients were on a point system, and who skips all the time, or who's monthly, you start looking at, all right, I've got this situation, I need to pare down, and it forces you to get more lean and mean, with who you're servicing. So it's not a fear that can't be solved. It's just, it is scary. And like you say, it's really one of those, I always equate it to the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I mean, once you've fulfilled giving adequate pay for an employee, them being able to trust you, being consistent and reliable, and making them feel safe, I mean, that's right above meeting their financial needs. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So that was one of your biggest kind of lessons.
hmm
What would you say one of your proudest moments in business is or was?
Well, I built the business to where it did not, it didn't need me physically there, which is good and bad because, you know, we talked beforehand. That's how I got into like all the contests and the monthly activities and those kind of things, because that's just the way my brain works, is I like that stuff. So as I got less involved, somebody else had to carry that through. But I would definitely say for me, um, at the time that I got that phone call, we weren't measuring quality, but if I were to have measured quality at that time, uh, I mean, there was a reason we didn't measure quality, because it was bad. It was really bad. And um, when we first started measuring, we were like 2.8 out of 4. We were on a 4 scale at that time. And, we evolved to where you were basically getting fired if you fell below a 3.65 towards the later years. So I would say what I'm most proud of is that we absolutely turned all that around. And, you know, I I employed people who were self-directed, self-motivated. They delivered 98% customer satisfaction and needed very little guidance from certainly me and even the office. And and that's a model that a lot of people can't ever achieve. And so my staff, they were great. And but it all was from putting the right parameters in place, and then being intentional about rewards and recognition and things like that. So I'm very proud of that.
Awesome. I really think that I love the quality. I think sometimes we're scared to ask our customers kind
Mm-hmm.
of feedback and quality. We're even scared to ask our employees feedback. Right. And
Yes. I know.
because we're scared of the answer. I think
Right.
only because it's an unknown. It's kind of like going back to firing. Like
Mhm.
we're scared to fire because we don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to leave us a bad review? Are they going to slander us? Are they going to steal our
Right.
customers? And so,
Yeah.
when it comes to
Yeah.
making big decisions or risk management, how do you balance risk and reward of making that bold decision in your business?
So I guess I asked myself, what if I don't do it? What's going to happen? And then what's the worst that's going to happen if I do it?
Yeah.
And so at that time where it was actually a little bit after that, drawing the line in the sand, I filled in for my office manager was on vacation. And this is when we were still smaller. And I filled in at the office, and our quality was still bad. Um, and this is when I started surveying. If the caller ID said current, is a current client, and particularly if it was the day that we serviced them or the day after, and I was filling in at the office, I quickly learned that this is not good. This is not good. That, you didn't want to answer the phone. And I mean, luckily I didn't have to work in there very often, but that was my aha moment to start surveying. And I remember when I first started surveying, I did not want to do it. I didn't want to do it for a couple of reasons. One of our core values is where we were no hassle service. And to me, surveys are a hassle. But I also knew that I had to have this information. If I'm going to give them better service, I have to know what they're thinking. And so I'm glad that I was able to reason with myself that I by me asking, whether it be the client or the employee, by me asking their satisfaction level, I am not influencing them one way or another. I'm just asking. And whether it be your client or your employee, they are telling everybody what they think. So why would I not want to know what they're telling people so I can do something about it? And so yeah, it was super scary to start. And our when we started the spin wheel for contest, I think I wanted a 3.3 out of 4, and that was bonus level. And like I say, we evolved to where you weren't spinning that wheel until you had at least a 3.75 or 8, but you got to start somewhere. And and I mean, if anybody ever needs any help with that, it really is looking at your current numbers and then taking that top percentage, and then that's where you want to put your baseline. And if your baseline is a 3.3 for excellence at that point in time, then that's where you start, because somebody's got to win. You
Yeah,
can't do a program like that where nobody wins. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that it also gives your employees a great perspective, and like, let's put the
Hmm.
employees aside, but gives the owners great perspective on, is their service as good as they think it is? I think sometimes we don't want to ask because we don't want that fake, those rose colored glasses to come off,
Right.
because it is your baby. It is our baby. We put so much work into it and time, and we think
Yeah.
it's great, but is it as great as we think it is?
Yeah.
And that's a hard reality to face. So I think surveying, open and honesty, communication, I don't think we could communicate enough with our employees or
Yeah,
customers.
that's what I say too. You can't over communicate. You just,
Um,
you're not going to err in a bad way that way. It might take more time than you need to take, but yeah, it's communication is probably one of the biggest problems that I see, and I'm sure you see.
Oh, absolutely. Um, so I want to move on to my next question. And I think
Hmm.
this is a fun question to ask all entrepreneurs, especially, you had your service business, you sold it. Now and you've
Right.
had the software, you still have it.
Yeah.
But how do you stay motivated to continue to innovate and keep pushing forward? What do you find that keeps you motivated or driven or passionate?
Yeah. And that's hard. So, my husband and I were just talking about this when I took that hospital job here. My former boss wrote on my interview "itchy feet," and I found that out years later. And I remember I was offended. I was like, "What?" And that's very true for me. I like I like new, and I just
Shiny
like to be
objects?
yeah, and so that's hard. And I will say, I will admit that I went through a period with quality driven that it's like, uh, I'm not, you can get in the rabbit hole. I mean, just like people that I talk to that are in the rabbit hole of just feeling horrible about their employees and their business, I can get in the rabbit hole about feeling like I'm not doing this or I'm not doing this. And, a lot of it is comparing yourself to others because it's, we've all had this experience where we're beating ourselves up. And then for whatever reason, you get some feedback from somebody and they're just like, oh my gosh, I think you're such and such and such. And you're like, really? Like, I don't see that at all. So I feel like we can be absolutely our own worst critic. But as far as staying energized, quite frankly, for me, I've got to keep goals that excite me that I'm working on. I mean, it can't be just, for me, it can't be just money goal. I'm not, I like money, but that's not, it's not like my top motivator. Now, I will say this, the closer that my husband and I get to retiring, I am more and more money motivated because, you know,
Yeah.
it, at one point we want to live off that. And so, and thank goodness he's got one of those jobs you put it away and save. But you, for me, I'm putting it in other businesses. And but yeah, it I like I like new projects, and I have to really watch myself on new projects. So I would tell you, I probably don't have that figured out. I just like anybody, I go through those periods of time where I'm like, "Mm." So I just, it's pretty imperative for me that I'm working towards a goal line of, like, right now we're working to try to get something new out for quality driven. Um, I've got goals for other parts of what I do. And so to feel like I've got new things is pretty important for me. Now, one thing I have found though, and another find the hard way, is I'm not a good have 10 businesses at a time person. I'm just not. And I mean, some people can do it well, but I mean, you seem to do it well. But for me, I definitely I pick my favorite, and the others are stepchildren. And I just, And honestly, that's why I made the decision about the cleaning business, is because I truly felt like I was no longer giving my staff the time and energy that they deserved. Um, my office manager had moved remote as well. And she was remote the last 2 years that we were operating, and we still did really well. But yeah, there was just a lot of guilt around not giving that business the care that I felt like it needed. Now, a funny thing about that is when I did decide to that I wasn't going to have that business anymore, then when I left and I told the employees, you know, it was just like, this is the best place I've ever worked, or you're the best boss I've ever had, and blah, blah, blah. And in the stories I told in my head was that I sucked
Yeah.
and I was doing terrible. And funny thing is, I felt that way with the clients as well, because I knew I wasn't doing, I used to be so good about client newsletters, employee newsletters, all of the things. And so when I told the clients, same thing. Like, I've tried all the services and you guys are by far the best and all these things. So after all that came back, there was a moment I thought, well, I guess I should cuss, but
Oh, you can
I
cuss on
thought,
this.
okay. Well, I thought, well, shit, I should have not done that, because all you see, sure, we got a lot of 5 stars and stuff, but the only thing you're paying
It's
attention
in your
to are
head.
the mistakes. Oh my gosh. So, learning lesson for all. I mean, I was really I was really beating myself up, and I don't lose sleep, and I was losing some sleep over just feeling like I was doing them a disservice. And it turned out I actually wasn't, but I still made the right decision for me.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, it maybe I would have delayed it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny. I think we get in our own heads, that imposter syndrome. We talk about it often here.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I- if I feel like we all still have it to a certain degree, but you have to have the exercises, the daily rituals to get you through every day of that, because that will probably keep us stuck more than anything.
Yeah.
I love that story. So, my last question is, any advice or tips for that young entrepreneur, or advice to the young version of Martha, right? Um, what would you have done differently? Like what do you wish you could go back and tell yourself, or what could you tell some young entrepreneurs that may be struggling when it comes to anything? At the end of the day, it's a lot of mindset when it comes to being an
Hmm.
entrepreneur. Um,
Yeah. You know, my early days, and I still do this to some degree, but I kind of kept my problems into myself. And, I sit here thinking, if I would have been more forthcoming with even just a small peer group and said, all right, here are the problems I'm having. And I don't, it could have been because I didn't feel like the people I was with really had the answer to that. And maybe because I think we all were kind of struggling, but I would guess that probably my pride got in the way of me telling the full story of, you guys, this is how bad it was. Um, and then I should have asked for help, is where I'm going. And I I should have asked for help. And then when you get the help, listen, listen and take action. Yeah.
I like that. I think when we're young, we are so hard-headed.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. It goes back to the Think and Grow Rich book about how some people they cannot reach success it says in the
Mm-hmm.
book, until late 40s to 50s, because you
Mm-hmm.
don't have the maturity level yet to handle certain circumstances or
Yeah.
understand the lesson. Um, and so for the young people out there, young versions of us, I don't think you have to necessarily be old to understand it. It's just you don't have the patience or appreciate the lesson at that age,
Right.
in the younger version. And peer groups are absolutely amazing. I think they're so popular now. Maybe they've always been. Um, and it's just confiding
Yeah.
in people who are going through the same thing.
Right. But there is one thing that I see about peer groups, like, and I'm talking mainly Facebook groups and stuff, but there's one thing I see about them that I think it's very helpful and healthy to try to get some feedback. But anytime it's at all the people the five people you hang around, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah, whatever that exact saying is.
You're the
But
average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
yes, there you go. And what I see sometimes in those Facebook groups is just, sure, it's great to have people commiserate with you, but if that's all that you do is just commiserate with each other, that's a terrible place to live because
Yes.
it's not action oriented, and it gives you the permission to continue to spiral or be in that hamster wheel, but it doesn't get you out of it. So get in, listen, and get out.
Well, that's a great topic because I think that one, they can be dangerous because they allow you to vent, but if all you do is vent, it becomes negative, or you fall into that negativity of constantly complaining
Yep.
because you have somebody listening, but then I'm not taking action. Um, and I also think, and a whole bunch of mentors are going to kill me when I say this, but Jonathan actually said this to me, Jonathan Potashnik. You
Yeah.
should be graduating out of your peer group. You should be graduating past
Right.
your coach, because if you're not, then
I
is your
agree.
coach coaching you, right? Is the mastermind group really helping you if you're just staying there and you're not up leveling or moving on to the next thing or the next thing or the next thing?
Right.
And I
Right.
know that, like I said, some coaches are going to kill me, consultants are going to kill me when I say that, because, but from his standpoint, I was like, man, and I was in his peer group.
Right.
um,
Exactly.
a really humble thing to say. Like, he goes, to me, it's an honor to see people move on, because like they've
Exactly.
learned what I've got to give, and now they have to move on to the next mentor.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. I very
and
much
there's
agree
something
with that.
yeah, something to be said about that. And to see people move on past like what I've done or other people have done or coaches have done is it's like a great feeling and honor to see, like, oh, uh,
Hmm.
that on to the next.
Hmm.
So to wrap up, Martha, what is
Okay.
there anything in the works, anything sexy or saucy for QDS coming out? Maybe? No, you
Yeah.
have your event.
The event is coming up, and I'm super excited about that. We already talked about that's a distraction for me for sure. I mean, I love to plan a party, and so and I get the best of both worlds this year because Dom and Megan are doing the speaker part and the topics. And so I get to just do the fun stuff, and so that's pretty awesome. But yeah, the retreat will be great, and we were talking about this will be my last one because just like you were just saying, I think that's the same for conferences. And I think that after a while people have evolved and they're looking for something new. And so, I kind of want to reinvent something different with somebody else. And but yeah, cuz for me, I kind of graduated from industry only conferences to all industries. And then just like you were involved with like the SaaS side, and you go to a lot of independent conferences. I go to some, and it's energizing to go and be a new, like, you don't know people there.
Yes.
I think that's really, but as far as what QDS has in the works, so we are building more and more our HR module, which I'll probably rename to People module, because it's not really HR law module at
And
all.
who likes HR?
And Jason Cup. And
Oh, yeah. Actually, just talked to him the other day. Yeah.
yeah, and there's some other guy that's the HR guy. But anyway, yeah, that's not the part. I like the data part. And so we're building out a really cool dashboard that is going to give you a lot of metrics regarding, length of employment, all this stuff, and cool calendar. So can't say
Nice.
too much until we get it out there, but it was on my original vision for QDS, and I think that original vision, we've keep evolving it, but that will be met by the end of the year. So that's
Awesome.
cool.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And we'll make sure to put in the show notes ways for you to get in touch with Martha. And also, if you want to find out more about QDS, we'll have those links in the show notes. Well, Martha, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Fearlessness Podcast. And I want to thank our listeners for listening. And if you guys want to find more episodes, you can find them on libbyd.com or thefearlessness.com. And that's a wrap, guys, for today's journey into the heart of fearlessness. Remember, every step is a move towards our own strengths and courage. Keep walking through those fires, because on the other side lies a version of yourself that's unstoppable. I'm Libby, reminding you to embrace fearlessness. Until next time, stay brave, stay bold, and keep pushing forward.